Today on Connect with Purpose, I'm joined by Kevin Kilty, who's the founder and CEO of Hubpay. So, welcome, Kevin, to our podcast.
Lovely to be here, Augusta.
Welcome. And I think without me introducing Hubpay, I think it would actually be better for you to introduce it. So, yeah, would you kindly share with the audience, what is Hubpay? What are you doing? What are you trying to achieve with it?
Sure. So Hubpay is a cross-border payment platform. We've been trading about 4 years now in the UAE. And effectively what we built, our main kind of product is a payments and accounts platform for businesses from small up to large across the UAE, where we can onboard businesses very quickly, give them leading kind of FX pricing and rates, and deliver kind of world-class kind of service across payments internationally.
Cool. Okay. So, were you the first player in the Middle East doing this? Was that
And
right?
we were the first fintech, correct. We were the first fintech. The UAE only brought out a reg framework about 5 years ago. Initially, one of the free zones in ADGM. Subsequently, it has done so in DIFC, and also now with the main regulator, Central Bank of the UAE.
Okay, nice. And what problem were you trying to solve?
I think we kind of saw it in two phases. So phase one, there was a fairly clear gap in the market for a TransferWise type solution for both retail and business customers, and that's what we launched. However, kind of phase two, which we're now beginning to finally move into, and it's taken longer than we would have liked, is to build more of a cross-border kind of platform for starting with businesses in UAE, but businesses across the wider region, and really leveraging the UAE's position as the kind of gateway to the emerging world, address a lot more of those kind of businesses, whether they're sending or receiving payments globally, and if those payments are indeed over any kind of currency or any destination.
Mhm. And do you think that like what's HubPay's edge in the context of the wider market, in the context of other firms that are doing this or similar things?
Yeah. So I think in the UAE initially there were no fintechs doing it. So you and I are both originally from the UK, and we saw everyone from TransferWise to kind of Monzo provide a simple solution where it was quick to kind of get an account. There was a solution to execute those payments kind of quite quickly and at a low cost. And that gap was missing in the UAE. We still think it is missing. Banks typically focus on providing and making the money around deposits and lending. Payments have always been a bit of a secondary consideration. So that's that's kind of how we started off, and we still think that's a pretty major fundamental gap. The second phase of that is going into a more integrated solution where we built out HubPay Connect, and we built out a whole load of APIs. So if you have a business, you can connect your business to our platform, and so you can have all of your payments fully automated and fully linked in, whether it's in your accounting software or your Salesforce CRM or your Oracle Analytics, etc. And I think outside of the UAE, we think that's still quite a significant gap across Europe. So you still have a lot of kind of TransferWises and eBreeze doing well on payments. We haven't seen really a very integrated API kind of platform to take it to the kind of next level.
Hmm. Interesting. And where did this idea come from? Like, had you spent time in the Middle East before, you came up with this, or how did this idea come up?
So my background was banking, so I understood kind of FX and payments and finance generally fairly well. I'd spent a significant amount of time across the into emerging markets, but more focused on kind of microfinance and seeing the benefit microfinance had in terms of transforming other economies. And so I thought that was a really kind of interesting aspect. And so my kind of view is just like if you look at a country like Nigeria, just how there's been a leapfrog where, in the UK, we had landlines, everyone had a landline in the house, then it went to mobile phones. When a country like Nigeria, I think from 1970 to 2010, they put on about 400,000 landlines. But from 2010 to 2015, they put on something like 45 million mobile phone subscribers. And so I see fintech having the same opportunity. Fintech is being considerably value add across Europe, um, from retailers to businesses to a whole range of different kind of verticals and products. In the emerging world, I see even greater potential because the gap is wider. And UAE struck me as a great focal point to start in UAE and then grow out to some of the countries I've been to, whether it's North Africa or wider Middle East or indeed Asia.
Has this space changed a huge amount then in the Middle East and in the UAE over the last 4 or 5 years since you've been operating here?
I think it's changed less than I possibly thought it was going to, if I'm being honest. I think we've seen a number of providers come in similar to us, but I think we're all fairly early on in terms of development. And I think that has been down to the ecosystem hasn't fully developed, but is now gaining traction and picking up velocity. So I think over the last kind of 5 years, probably since we started, there wasn't a huge number of accelerator programs. Venture capital was more limited. There wasn't a huge pool of engineers or people in that kind of space. And so the momentum wasn't quite there. However, I would say in the last year or 18 months, that's shifted quite considerably. And one of the big factors in the wider kind of fintech space has been the growth and the successful launch of the reg framework around cryptocurrency. Because what we're beginning to see now is traditional kind of more traditional kind of fintech overlapping with cryptocurrency to create new financial kind of systems.
Yeah. And what themes are you seeing then within this space, just more broadly, more generally?
Three teams. Our best I think number one is the ability to onboard businesses and customers rapidly from a risk point of view, because that's always with retail users has always been easier. People like Revolut have done it very well. With businesses, it's been much more challenging, and we haven't seen a huge level of innovation and change in that. So I think the ability to onboard and get a business live very quickly is the kind of first kind of step. Relatively obvious, but still has been quite challenging for a lot of businesses. And then I'd say two other areas. One would be around that level of integration where if you're a business right now, you want a one-stop shop for all your kind of payments needs across cards, across FX, across accounts, but you want it fully integrated in a system. So when you make a payment, it updates your accounting software real time, it updates your software real time, etc. So I think a much more advanced kind of integrated kind of platform. And the third one, I would say the third theme is the most seismic kind of shift. And that is the emergence of stablecoin as a major financial system. So you've seen USDT used by Tether in the United States, and then also Circle as the two leading kind of stablecoin providers, where they've launched a digital token backed by the US dollar. What that addressed was, if I'm sending you Bitcoin, and the volatility in Bitcoin on a daily basis is very challenging. So if you invoice me for recruiting contract, and I was like, hey, I'll pay it in Bitcoin, you'd be like, great, well, let's put some buffer in there because that could change by 3-5% by the time I receive it. Where if you invoice me in dollars and I say, well, I'm going to pay in USDT, you are getting the exact same kind of currency, right? There is no volatility into it, and it can be switching from USDT into real physical dollars in seconds at barely any cost. I think that we're beginning to see that make waves, and I think it's going to have the biggest impact in kind of emerging markets.
Do you think that's going to shift your business long term?
I think that's the future of the business, Augusta. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the way I see it right now is it's going to be a major pillar of the business going forward. So where we are right now is our position. We've started in UAE and we'll be growing out internationally. We've got 2 other licenses pending in further jurisdictions. We're licensed in Pakistan, and Pakistan are going to bring out a crypto license framework soon. And what you'll be able to see is go, okay, let's say Steel Importer Limited, who was previously paying in dollars or euros or indeed maybe like Nigerian naira, just for some of their invoices, do they want to either send or receive USDT as well, right? And again, they're going to want one platform to do that seamlessly, where they can end up collecting fiat. A lot of these companies themselves don't want to hold cryptocurrency or don't want to transact. They want to deal with the fiat, but they want to benefit of the speed and the lack of friction and quite a few instances lower cost.
Do you think this stablecoin play is predominantly within currencies like countries where their currency is not stable, so emerging markets?
Yeah, I think we're seeing probably a more acute case there, but I will give you an example. We are seeing transactions where people are trading, importing or exporting into Japan. And Japan is, third largest economy globally, very advanced kind of financial systems. But Japan has three mega banks. I used to work for one of them previously when I was in the city in London. And they
Mm.
are weighed down by legacy systems, and they will be down by legacy costs. So both the speed and the cost is quicker to go from, let's say, euros to USDT to Japanese yen, what we call the stablecoin sandwich, rather, and vice versa, rather going straight from euros to Japanese yen, right? And that is because, so I spoke to somebody who was selling pharmaceuticals into Japan from Europe, and they were waiting to get the Japanese yen back and convert it back into euros. And it was just taking 5 to 7 days. So really disrupting their working capital cycle. And then the margins were ferociously high. They were the FX spreads were very expensive. Once they brought a stable coin, they were executing the trades within 30 minutes, end to end, and it was cheaper. So the impact there in global trade, which is vastly more than what we send on a retail level by about 100 to 200 times, is massive. And that's, so for developing markets and emerging markets alike.
That's interesting. So if you're a small business, medium business, large business listening to this, using stable coins actually can reduce your costs and increase your speed of
Yes.
international transfers. Yeah, transfer. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. I should take note. Okay. So and do you think that more and more stable coins are going to get created then?
It'll be an interesting one. So once again, the United States leads the industries on technology, right? I mean, from everything from social media to electric vehicles, and then people can then replicate it, right? I think it's a big challenge about what we're going to see, and so I think the emergence of USDT and USDC has, in my view, kind of maintained the dollar's supremacy at a time when, especially with kind of trade wars going on, there is concern about the dollar losing its status as a reserve currency. I think the fact that you have these stablecoins in play, I think they've ensured its prominence for the next 100 years. Do I see other countries like Euros doing it? Yeah, I absolutely think. I'm sure there already is one out from Euro. We're just not seeing it in the market as yet. And I know China is now deciding and discussing it. I think if you're a country in other markets, it's something you need to get to grips of right now, because it's going to have a huge impact in sovereign nations' monetary policy. Because if everyone starts moving out of your currency for favors for a digital stable token, that's going to be a huge problem about how you actually control money supply, because you're going to see an enormous splice on that kind of currency. So I think it's something you will see more of it. I saw recently Andrew Bailey, Governor of Bank of England, who was more conservative about it, said actually there's a use case for it, and they are exploring it more actively. And so it'll be interesting to see what the Bank of England does in that rather soon.
The stablecoin play is really interesting because I think, especially in relation to the devaluation of like the US dollar as the most prominent currency, I think that's super interesting point, because I've been thinking for a long time that US dollar is gonna not be so prominent in even 10 years. So
Well, that's absolutely, and the current leadership has certainly accelerated that from where the economy was at from a trade war point of view. Because once you start putting on tariffs and stuff, you'll go, well, like, am I going to hold dollars anymore? And then if you've seen the increase in kind of gold price, that's a huge indication where that capital flight has already taken place. On the flip side, getting the Genius Act passed through the Senate, which had a whole load of structural changes around cryptocurrency and stablecoin, I think has allowed the kind of spirit of entrepreneurship within that industry really just gain kind of further momentum. And I would say that's something the UAE has emulated very well with the bar licensing or the crypto firms. There's a huge number of cryptocurrencies now, not just putting an office here, but putting either regional or their global headquarters in the UAE. So I think that's going to be a significant boon for the UAE.
do you think that in the future, there's going to be a situation where certain cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin is pegged against something? Like, I know people are obviously, do you think that there's a future in that? Mm.
Thing is difficult. I think it's difficult for Bitcoin to do that. The criticism of Bitcoin is either you're an asset or a currency. You can't be both, right? You know, gold stopped being a currency when people started using it as an asset, right? And Bitcoin has always been treated as an asset, right? And economists have debated this. That's the inherent problem with it. The way new Bitcoin is mined naturally increases its value, right? So it's I think there's a catch 22. So no, I don't think it's. I think what you'll do is you'll have further maybe stablecoins, maybe other. The question is what do you peg it to? You do already have digital tokens pegged to gold, right? Will you have other digital tokens pegged to other kind of assets? The expansion and tokenization is doing so. But I don't think we'll see on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin will stay a kind of independent free float currency.
Interesting. And how does AI impact your business or this whole sector? How do you see it?
Yeah, this is super interesting because we've seen there's a lot of talk, like we've got, Bloomberg on the TV playing in the office behind us. And every day now there's a talk about, are we in the AI bubble? Is it similar to this kind of dot-com bubble, etc.? And some country, a lot of companies' valuations increased without, per se, a real marketing improvement in how they're using AI to either improve business processes or increase efficiency. I think that's a case for some more established businesses because their legacy systems will weigh them down. So there's only so much impact AI maybe be able to have, right? It's like putting another system on top of a few hundred worth of legacy systems that they already have in place. Within tech companies, if it's not integrated in every layer of your business, you're in trouble. And the point the impact has had on us, it has been massive. So I'll give you 3 examples. One was you spoke about onboarding previously. Now, most banks may take weeks, sometimes months to onboard a business. We've already got it down to 24 hours because we're using AI to capture, process all the forms, make sure they're accurate. We've tested out the new AI-driven software. It has a 0% error rating so far. And so by early next year, we think it's going to go down to minutes in terms of onboarding a business. The whole thing will be done, processed, every kind of, we're uploading right now how we do transaction monitoring to check for money laundering, etc., and building a program around that. It's the rate of change is huge. So that's one very obvious place. Another obvious place I would say that is significant is our CTO, Dan Black, has said to me about 6 to 8 weeks ago. He runs a team of 10 engineers. And he said, I've never been concerned before about my job. And he said, I'm still feeling okay about it now. But he said, it's only this last month, we now are no longer coding. So I think our code base is about 250,000 lines of code. And in 4 days, and that's taking like 2 years to build up. And in 4 days, he added 20,000 lines of code. We went through QA testing perfectly, and he did it all himself using AI. He wasn't writing the code, he was simply writing the prompts. So our ability now, we run 1-week engineering sprints. So if you ask, let's say you're one of our customers or us, and you ask for a new product or a new feature, or indeed an integration going back to software, we can move exponentially quicker than we could just a few months ago. And so that ability, that growth of the business, and that's it's going to have 3 kind of impacts in terms of how we grow the business. One, our cost base in terms of huge engineering teams will not increase massively because simply we're doing much more to less. 2, our ability to respond to customers' needs in terms of either a product or a feature they want, it will be rapid. And 3 is AI will begin to start thinking independently about what other new products or features you would want, independent of kind of getting customer feedback or ideation ourselves.
Okay. Super interesting. Do you think then within your business or within your space, AI could be the great leveler in the sense that you're obviously 4 years in, 5 years in. How much of your business is like the marketing, the relationship?
Yeah, keep going.
How much of it is, what I'm trying to get at is like, for example, say there's a new entry into the market, can they catch up in terms of if the code's that quick to replicate all this
Yeah.
stuff? Or is it a relationship business still and a marketing business still?
I think time to market, I mean, it took us a full year just to build our core engineering stack, right? In terms of a basic ledger of payments going in, payments going out. So we built all our tech in-house. I think that time to market now has gone from a year down to probably 6 weeks. It's that kind of speed, right? Um, to answer your question, I still think there is a lot of operational build out. We need to go and get licenses. We need to put teams in place, etc. But if your engineering now is so much faster, you can free up more cost and more management time for the other areas. So yes, it improves the whole pace. Our marketing costs and our relationship
Hmm.
are a factor of business, but they're a more modest factor of the kind of business, right? Um, and I think the great leveler, what you will see is you'll see just like, so Bill Gates was on CNBC yesterday, and he said it's going to be a bigger impact on the internet. And I remember when he was on the Tonight Show, gosh, like 25 years ago, maybe more. And I remember my dad playing the clip or showing it to me, and he when Bill Gates' initial kind of biography, and Gates and we've been asked about, what about the internet? And this is literally as the internet was just coming to life. Mm. And he was like, "Oh, it's the next big thing. That's going to change everything, right?" And the comparison I would make is look how many things were built on top of the internet, from e-commerce to social media, etc. What I think you'll have in terms of AI is you will have completely new products imagined. And I think both the two pillars I would say our business will be built on going forward is AI and stablecoins. So future financial products we built on stablecoins, they'll be using smart contracts. The smart contracts, the risk rating will be all analyzed by an AI machine. There will be no involvement in doing transaction monitoring, credit at risk assessment, credit committees. That is all gone. There'll be human oversight over a number of um, systems built by AI, and that will transform trade. And one point I would segue into it all is I think that will have a huge impact in places like UAE, where it's become such a trading hub, because I think so many businesses, the volume of trade and the volume of commerce will just increase exponentially.
Yeah. What's your advice then to business owners or people who are running companies at the moment with AI? Like AI is obviously a buzzword and everyone talks about it, but practically, you know, what's your advice to people who are running businesses? Where should they be looking to add this?
I think so. I would extend the same advice I would kind of give to our that we're using internally. And so we're going to do a Series B fundraising end of Q1 of next year. So in about 5 months from now, and
Mm, mm,
you've got a kind of hiring freeze until then, right? We're trying to keep our costs really tight, get to profitability, execute a fundraising. However, three of our hires is we're going to build out a whole AI team, and the AI team is to go through every different aspect of business, from pay operations to finance to the risk team, and go right, completely change the systems, please. We want to have an AI agentic approach in here to transform our processes, strip out the cost, and to create a scenario where our business can scale aggressively without needing a significant increase in human capital, right? So I think that would be, I would say to any established business, look around and get somebody, just bring them into the team, one or two people, to think about what's the AI process that you could immediately implement to strip out cost, improve efficiencies, and stuff like improve stuff like error checking. So, we've got a pay ops team and they're reconciling payments. Human error is just way too high in that, right? Doesn't matter how good they are. And so, and you're going to see that across multiple different industries, how the error rate drops from everything from surgery to car crashes, because you've got an AI machine defining the kind of safety parameters. So I'd say that would be the one internally. And then externally, if you're looking to use providers,
mm.
pick kind of providers that have an AI first approach, because the value add they're going to have in terms of services and features for external suppliers you're using will be significant.
Has your 5-year plan then changed completely since the use of AI within the business? Like, have your projections just rapidly increased in terms of what?
I think the projections I always put were probably slightly too aggressive anyhow. So they they probably haven't changed. They probably just got slightly more justified. I think the strategy has shifted, Augusta. I think the ability for us, I think there's two things. I think the stablecoin and AI are becoming two key pillars, and seeing how much of it wasn't hype, uh, and the demand we're seeing from customers across that kind of space for a smart business, a business built on kind of a new financial ecosystem, effectively a fintech 3.0. I think that demand is so acute that yes, we are going to grow, launch in more markets than we previously planned. And I think our growth trajectory will be faster in those markets.
No. If you're a business watching this, and they're wanting to do transactions, they're wanting to they found this interesting, the stable coin piece. When down the line, are they, you know, how easy is it for them to kind of start using Hubpay?
It will probably take you less than a day to go live with us as a business platform. We've got a what we call Treasury Essentials, just accounts and payment setup is leading the market in the UAE. And then secondly, we're adding further features around that all the time in terms of stablecoins in the future. But we've already done the kind of engineering, the work around it. So we're in a leading position to be able to offer that.
Interesting. And what got you interested in starting your own thing in the first place? Like, I know you were in banking and in finance, and you obviously had this idea, but what drove you to do this?
It was complete accident. It wasn't planned. I moved to Dubai in 2016 because I really wanted to go and work in emerging markets. And I thought Dubai was a very good base to place myself, not necessarily intending to stay actually in Dubai, but looking to go to another market across the Middle East or Africa and work ideally more in an impact investment environment. And then when I was here, it's like, why has nobody launched a fintech in the UAE? It's got a huge market. It's rapidly growing. It's got so many roads into other markets across the region where there's a complete lack of penetration. And I was like, well, could I do this? And I started doing research. Then I had this license coming out, and I was like, I'm gonna go launch this. And that's what happened. And then I got into an accelerator, which then kind of validated myself and validated the plan. And then we took fundraising from there. But to be quite frank, I tripped into it. It wasn't a well thought through plan.
And you've obviously been in finance in this space a while now.
Yeah.
So what's kept you in the game? Like, do you have any advice for people who are in very stressful jobs, like being a founder, being a CEO? I know it's a very stressful industry. Like, what do you do out of work to stay in the game longer?
Well, I would say there's probably two things. There's the professional kind of systems that have kept business alive. And it's definitely been in a very tenuous position before when something hasn't launched. We were too early in the market, as was the case through 22 to kind of 24. But this last year, the capabilities that we needed came online. UAE came off the grey list last year, etc. And so the businesses has grown at a multiple in terms of revenues just within the last 6 months. And so what kept us alive in that was having a really strong venture capital funding behind us. Our lead VCs are Run Ventures from Salt Lake City. But I've also got other VCs like Olive Tree, from Boston, ICU out of London, Stormbreaker, Silicon Valley. And they were enormously supportive and they saw the long-term value. And so I think that's why it's essential to have a robust, but also have a VC fund on the cap table as opposed to some alternative funding. Like angels are good, but not too many angels because they may not have money to follow on when you're in challenging times when that plan hasn't come off, as is often the case more than not. I would say they're kind of professional systems, personal systems outside. Try and get a good sleep and try and work out and stay active to try and distract your mind so it can rest at the weekends. I try and go to the gym, and I've been poor at doing so, but the last kind of year or so, I've got a lot better in using some of the kind of more exciting outdoor stuff you can do in the UAE. So on Saturday, I've been there before, but I think it's the coolest thing ever is the Surf Abu Dhabi. this is where they create this artificial surfing wave in Abu Dhabi. Not the cheapest activity, but it's the coolest thing I've done in the UAE, and it's much cheaper than going and getting on a plane going on a surf holiday. So surfing on Saturday, and then as the temperature cools, I'm going and rock climbing up in Ras Al Khaimah on Sunday. And there's an incredible rock climbing valley called Stada, like UAE's largest mountain, a couple of X. And I believe the UAE military bolted all the walls so you can sports climb pretty high, about 300-meter climbing walls. And so that's a great thing to get out of the office and go someplace and think about something quite different.
What's the purpose then, long term, for yourself in work? Like, what keeps you going? Yeah.
I wouldn't trade my worst day in a startup for my best day working in banking or another kind of corporate job. And that's just my personal preference. Yes, it can be absolutely grinding at times, but it's enormously exciting and empowering. And I think a lot of the kind of team have that kind of vibe. You get to do in a few months what you wouldn't do in a few years in a more established kind of business. Yeah, it comes with a lot of risk and a lot of pressure, and that's not for everyone. And people need to assess that, whether they're a founder or whether they're just in the senior team. Our senior team are incredible. We're lucky to have them, but they work very hard. And there's times when we've had open conversations about burnout. So the excitement of what you do day to day, I've got no interest in doing anything else. I've got no interest in selling out, retire. What would I do? I think I'd like to build Hubpay for the long term. I see a significant gap in the market across the UAE, across Europe, and across the wider region for a much more evolved 3.0 fintech, looking to address some of those trends around AI and stablecoin we discussed. And, where could that go? I think with the success and the growth of the capital markets in the UAE, and also maybe the capital markets in let's say, someplace like London, you could look at an IPO listing, whether it's in one exchange or indeed a dual listing.
So it's a long term, like the plan will be to IPO.
I'd say that's starting it is, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're coming up to a VC round, like a Series B.
Yeah.
How what are you wanting from that? Like, will you be bringing in original investors to put more in? Will you be bringing in people from outside? For anybody watching this, who's an investor, would you are you opening up to conversations now, or what's the
Yeah, they're starting. Well, we're starting now. So the strategy would be, Augusta, I think our existing investors have been incredible. They'll invest pro rata. I think the idea is we are a holding co, a Delaware C Corp. So Hubpay Inc. is technically American. And that owns the UAE business, owns the Pakistan business, although in the future businesses internationally. Preference are most likely based on initial conversations, as I think it'll probably be a US investor to lead, but I can't say that for certain. There are other investors from the region, whether it's Saudi or whether it's the UAE, who are keen to bring on board that have some bit more regional expertise and some insight. But our position is our business in Q1 will hit profitability. And so the capital and the kind of investors we need are really to go take this business that's no longer a startup, but is now a scale up, to see how quickly it can scale, how many countries it can launch in, and how much of an international player it can become. So it's certainly be like targeting that venture capital kind of funding, but the kind of growth stage investors. And we've already, this is a good thing about LinkedIn and Crunchbase. Guys, investors from Silicon Valley to Mumbai can find your details quite quickly. And we've had quite a few reach outs and we've had a conversation. So this is where we're at. You can send some information and you can track how we're doing and see if there's a mutual fit.
Amazing. And your presence right now, physical presence, is in London and Dubai.
Yeah, I split my time. At the moment, it's more Dubai. I think it'll be more international going forward. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, it's been amazing to chat, and thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing what you do with everything.
I look forward to tapping up at Series B to help us with the recruitment, Augustus. Thank you very much for your time.
Doesn't sound like you need too much with all the AI.
Absolutely. I'm sure as we go deeper on the FX market, some of the smart traders, and some of the quants will be most value add. But yeah, look forward to it. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for your time, Kevin. Thank you.